We're up. Jen, you're off mic.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. For your information, this meeting will be recorded. Again, thank you for joining us today for New Jersey's Clean Water Council's public hearing on PFAS compounds in water and wastewater residuals. We would like for you to please place your intent to testify in the chat. You'll see a icon that says chat underneath it. Please put your name, and your organization, and that we will be collecting those as the meeting goes on. Also, please remain on mute unless you are called upon to testify. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, and please send any written comments to us by January 27th to cwc@dep.nj.gov. And I will now turn this meeting over to Tony McCracken, Chair of the Clean Water Council.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, all, and thank you for signing in. Hopefully, this will be something that you can really get a good feeling of what we're doing and why we're doing it. My name is Tony McCracken. I am a nationally certified estates licensed land use planner. I was the assistant planning director at Somerset County for many, many, many years, just retired about a year ago. As many of you remember, the Clean Water Council held a public hearing in 2021, at which time we took testimony on PFAS compounds and discharges to surface water. PFAS is a large family of thousands of man-made chemicals that have been used in industrial and commercial applications for over 20 to 70 years. PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, repel water and oil, resistant to heat and chemical reactions. As a result of the 2021 hearing, we provided recommendations to the department, of which the Division of Water Quality implemented many of the recommendations. The council hearing will continue to solicit input from you guys and the environmental impacts PFAS family of chemicals. The hearing focuses on addressing the management of PFAS and residuals and building upon the previous public hearing. You can see that we actually took the information, gave it to the department, and the department then was able to formulate some of the programs with it. So your input is very, very important, very effective. I'd like to introduce the other council members that are on. If you guys can just, give a wave whenever I call you. As again, my name is Tony McCracken. I am the chair. We have James Cosgrove, who's the immediate past chair. James, if you're there. And we have Russ Finari, vice chair.
Good afternoon.
George Bacone. Maria Connolly.
Hello, everyone.
Sandra Howland. Harry Wozniak. Ashley Kerr. Chris Anderson and Jefferson Coffey. They both share from the Water Supply Authority.
Chris Andreessen's here from the council.
I'm sorry.
Chris Andreessen is on from the council.
Thank you. Mary Ann Holden, Board of Public Utilities.
Commissioner, BPU.
Pamela Goodwin. I know she's on. I had heard her before.
Hello. Thank you, Tony.
Justin Baker, I'm sorry. David Kovac.
Hello.
And Amy Goldsmith.
Thank you for having us all here.
Sure, thank you for coming. I know that James Cosgrove is on too, because I heard him before.
Yes, I'm here.
There he is. All right. With that, the DP continues to make strides forward in addressing PFAS in wastewater. Today, our goal is to solicit input on how to approach the management of residuals in PFAS, containing PFAS. PFAS and residuals are a direct result of presence of PFAS in water and wastewater prior to the treatment process. PFAS is a manufactured compound that may enter our water resource through multiple pathways, including domestic, industrial, commercial sources. When water and wastewater enter the treatment plant, sludge or residual settles out during the treatment process. If the water being treated contains PFAS compounds, the resultant sludge may also contain PFAS compounds as well. The sludge needs to be managed, and management alternatives are limited in New Jersey currently. The Clean Water Council recognizes their role in assessing the department and providing recommendations on how best to manage PFAS and sludge. The hearing today aims to solicit these public comments on the topic and assist the council in providing recommendations to the DEP moving forward. Now, just again, a little about our council. We were established in 1967. We serve as an advisory board to the DEP. They bring issues to us that they're concerned about, and they want our input on how to address those issues when they formulate their programs. So we feel ourselves to be a very beneficial sounding board for the department. We meet monthly unless we advertise otherwise. We consist of 18 members representing disciplines from labor and industry, the environment, citizens groups, people who are concerned about clean water. I must identify and mention the DEP staff that made this possible today. Without them running the show, we wouldn't be doing this. So, that being said, Jennifer Feltus, who you met before, John Murray, who has been more of a direct contact to our board, and Carrie Standowski, who was also on and put much of this together today. So thank you, folks. This couldn't happen without your help. In addition, I want to make a special mention to Janice Brogel, who is on. She's a division director, a division of water quality. She's been assisting our Clean Water Council for many years, and she's going to be retiring at the end of the month. So, with regrets, many thanks, though, for your assistance over the years, and best wishes, for your future. I know I retired myself, so I know that can be a change in your life, but a real beneficial one. All right. With that being said, is the commissioner out of his meeting? Is he available at this point?
Yes, he is joined.
Okay. We properly introduce him. Our DEP commissioner, Sean LaTourette. Hello, Sean. He was with us last year as well, and when we were first broaching this topic, and he was there speaking to us about why this is important, how we could best, offer our suggestions, and how the public through this process can offer suggestions. He was appointed by the Governor, Philip Murphy, as commissioner of DEP, June the 14th. Commissioner LaTourette is responsible for formulating statewide environmental policy and directing programs and protecting the public health to ensure the quality of New Jersey air, land, water, and natural historic resources. He's a lawyer and policymaker. With more than 20 years of experience in environmental protection. Commissioner LaTourette began his career defending victims of toxic exposure, including organizing and advocating for the needs of vulnerable New Jersey communities whose drinking water is contaminated by petrochemicals. Throughout his career, shaping environmental law and policy, he served as executive roles, trusted advisor to governments, community, nonprofit organizations, leaders in industry and infrastructure, while also litigating high-stakes lawsuits involving environmental, energy, and public health concerns. That's pretty important stuff. Commissioner LaTourette has joined the DEP as the Chief Legal and Regulatory Policy Advisor, then to Commissioner Catherine McCabe. He's developed and led initiatives to prioritize environmental justice when facilitating greenhouse gas reductions, climate change, resilience, adaptation, renewal of natural resources, water infrastructure enhancement, brownfield redevelopment and community renewal, and natural resource conservation and restoration. He's guided deeply, and I know this, he's deeply guided by equity in applications of land use and a professional philosophy that uniting economic development and environmental improvements promotes the public good. He was born and raised in New Jersey. He's a Jersey guy. Commissioner LaTourette graduated magna cum laude from Rutgers University. He earned the law degree summa cum laude from Rutgers University, where he was class salutatorian. He's a recipient of multiple environmental and governmental awards, published on environmental law, natural resources, and damage and climate issues. We're so pleased to have you with us today, Commissioner LaTourette.
Well, thank you, Chair. I very much appreciated the invitation to join you all. At some point, I think I'll learn how to operate the camera. I hope that it's coming in clear and everybody can hear me okay.
Yes. Perfect. Perfectly.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. One of the things that I think about a lot when we gather in groups like this, and something that I will talk with all of our assistant commissioners about and all of our directors on issues that are within our ambit, which are a lot, as everyone knows, that it's really important to go back to first principles and look hard at what it is that our agency was created to do. And so when I join meetings like this, or if I'm with the Association of Environmental, the New Jersey Association of Environmental Commissions, for example, like I will always go back, and this is like a lawyer's habit, to the organizing statute, and I want to read it again to center myself, because this job is big, right? To be a steward of our environment, it's a big job, one that nobody could ever do alone. And I'm lucky. I'm lucky because I get to tie the bow on things, right? We've got folks like Pat Gardner, our Assistant Commissioner for Water Resource Management, our Director, Tricia Angelito, Janice Brugel, and my heart breaks at the thought of retirement. I think I have a mental block about it. Carlton Dudley, our Director of Water Enforcement, and the entire team. And thank you for mentioning those who provide the backbone staff to the council, including Jen Feltis and folks on her team. My point being that without this council, without the folks who lend their time and their talents to this work, offer their reactions and share their expertise in response to the really challenging issues that face us, and we'd be nowhere. We'd be effectively nowhere without the incredible people of this agency and those who are participating here today that may not be in government, and those who really graciously give their service to councils like this, because there's a whole heck of a lot of work, and the reward, I think, is great. We get to make real improvements in the quality of our waterways, in the safety of our drinking water. But the reward doesn't come in the way that most do, right? It's not remunerative. But we're lucky, and I'm grateful that the Clean Water Council is continuing to fulfill its mission, which is to support, to hold accountable, to make our issues more salient within the public, to make sure that we're being responsive and creating the forums for public engagement that are just so critical. Because our water resources, like many of our natural resources, are so easily taken for granted. I don't have to tell you that the challenge that we face with forever PFAS chemicals is significant. New Jersey, unfortunately, is led the nation in our extent of impacts, but thankfully, because of this institution, because of the council, because of the work of advocates and accountability partners, we've led the nation in responding to the challenge of PFAS by adopting standards, by bringing litigation against those who are responsible, not because we want to beat people over the head, but because everyone should do what my grandmother drilled into mine, which is that you leave the place better than you found it. And that's not been the case. Just in the last year alone, we've made such incredible progress from within DEP and with all of our partners, right? We've fully established and began the regulatory implementation around our MCLs for PFOA, for PFAS, for PFNA. We know the non-compliance that exists. We established the groundwater quality standards for PFOA, for PFAS, for PFNA. We've added those substances to our list of hazardous substances. We've expanded the NGIPD's permit application testing requirements around the pollutant and listing requirements for discharges to groundwater. We're working with our publicly owned treatment works and industrial facilities to make sure that we are collecting the information to confront this shared challenge. And to that end, just earlier this week, I issued an administrative order with respect to the approach that our Division of Water Quality, Janice Vogel in particular, and team have worked so hard to bring folks along, letting our partners know that we're not approaching this data sharing from a perspective of enforcement, but in an act of partnership, because that's what the public deserves and expects. And we're working together on improving our infrastructure, which is in deep need of investment. Last year, we launched our water infrastructure investment plan to bring together the pool of resources and bring those to bear on what is a $30+ billion need throughout the state for water infrastructure investment. We're working with our partners at the Environmental Protection Agency, both the region and headquarters, in order to advance really meaningful technical assistance programs that are stemming from the bipartisan infrastructure law. And because that's not enough, also seeding them from within the state and this very agency as well. None of that happens by itself. It only happens because of the folks that are participating, not just here today, but the folks at DEP who work their hearts out every day to improve our public health and the environment that we share. We've funded considerable improvements through our partnership with the Infrastructure Bank, and I cannot thank Mr. Zimmer and his team enough. We've seen consistent and much needed investment in our state revolving funds from our governor and our legislature consistently in every budget. And we are really, really grateful for that continued support. Our communities need it. I'm really proud to be part of an administration that puts its money where its heart is. And most importantly, with the leadership of our Director of Environmental Justice, Candace Perry, and all throughout this organization, we are working hard to advance environmental justice and equity in all that we do. It's easy to say, right? It's easy to talk about carrying the imperative of equity and justice in your heart. It's a whole other thing to put it into practice within a bureaucracy, which I don't use pejoratively. I think bureaucracies are important, helpful, and necessary. And we're working so hard to sow equity and do justice. And I think we've seen our Division of Water Quality, our Division of Water Supply, as well as enforcement, work to do just that, and how we've executed our strategies and how we've made funding opportunities reach those in need. I'm not going to suggest to you the job is done, far from it. But I stand here in starting my third year in this position, full of gratitude for all of the work that has been done and for the commitment I know that the council and that our water resources management program holds to seeing each piece of this work through and expanding upon it in the weeks and months and years ahead. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for, there we go, I'm on now. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your insight. Let me say that I know the Commissioner is obviously very passionate about what he does, and he really cares about, the department and the efforts that we put forth. Commissioner, we will be, after we get comments from the public, we'll be formulating a letter to you, as we did last year, that will make the recommendations that we see or the directions that we suggest the department should look regarding PFAS. So I look forward to our council preparing that letter for you and then getting it to you shortly, after we get all the comments. The comments are to come in by the 27th of January. So by middle of February, end of February, we expect to get you some results.
I appreciate that, Chair, and you have my commitment to dig right in.
Thank you very much. I know you will too. Thank you very much. You're obviously passionate about this program. Okay, you're welcome to stay with us, or I imagine your schedule is pretty busy. But thank you again.
Many thanks to all of you.
All right, we have from the EPA and also from Michigan, we got a couple of presenters that are going to give what they're doing. So we know what we're doing in the state. You folks will learn what we're doing in the state, but we have some people from the outside that'll tell us what they're doing to give us a better perspective. That sometimes, when you're in your own box, you can't see outside of it and see what's happening elsewhere. But Virginia Wong, who was here with us last year and came back again for this year to continue her discussion regarding that. Let me say Virginia Wong is chief of the Clean Water Regulatory Branch in New Jersey. Of the Water Division of US EPA Region 2. Region 2 covers New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, US Virgin Islands, and 8 federally recognized Indian nations. In her position, Virginia directs and manages the entire port source control program, water quality standards, and dredging, sediments, and ocean disposal. Virginia has over 30 years of experience in wastewater management, industrial waste, pretreatment, NPDES permits. I almost said NPDES, that's us, and enforcement programs. Also with her today, also from the EPA, is Tess Richmond, who's a biologist in EPA's biosolids program within the Office of Water. Her work focuses on regulatory and programmatic activities. Over the past 4 years, Tess' work has included planning 2 EPA biosolid national meetings, publishing biosolid biennial reports number 8 and 9, developing guidance on lagoon cleanouts, streamlining requirements for products derived from sewage sludge, and supporting risk assessment for chemicals found in biosolids. Tesh graduated from Lawrence University with a BA in biology and economics. So with that, if I could then present to you both Virginia Wong and Tess Richmond. I guess Virginia, you'll be going first and with your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, and thank you, Commissioner, and for the introduction, and I want to thank New Jersey DEP for inviting EPA to present today. I wanted to commend New Jersey DEP, the Clean Water Council, for their commitment and continuing to advance the mission to protect water from PFAS. Last year, I was here to present the EPA's PFAS roadmap, and New Jersey DEP and the council would continue to just take it on and spend a lot of effort focusing on the industrial discharge. So this year, no doubt, the biosolids is the next phase, and we are happy to be here. And as the commissioner said, this is a partnership. It is a partnership because we are in this together. And I feel privileged to be part of this and be able to support and provide the technical or resource that we have and share with you guys. With that, I think Tess is going to present first, and then we're going to be in and out and do this presentation. So I will hand it over to Tess right now.
And are my slides showing up well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So like Virginia said, we're going to kind of share this presentation. We're going to talk about some of the basics of biosolids, how the biosolids program at EPA regulates pollutants found in biosolids. Virginia's going to talk a little about the NPDES and pre-treatment programs, and then some recent memos that have come out of EPA addressing PFAS discharges. So first of all, what is sewage sludge, or what is biosolids? So sewage sludge is a product of the wastewater treatment process. During wastewater treatment, liquids are separated from the solids, and then the solids are treated chemically and physically to produce a semi-solid nutrient-rich product. Sewage sludge can be disposed of via incineration, it can be landfilled, or it can be beneficially reused as a soil amendment via land application. So the terms biosolids and sewage sludge are used interchangeably quite often. However, we typically use biosolids to mean sewage sludge that's been treated to meet the federal requirements in Part 503 and that are intended to be land applied as a soil amendment. So sewage sludge is generated again, during the treatment of domestic wastewater at a municipal treatment works, meaning that sewage sludge, from the federal perspective, is not purely industrial sludges. So again, sometimes those terms are used interchangeably, but residuals from solely industrial sources like pulp and paper fibers would not be considered sewage sludge under Part 503. How are biosolids regulated? Section 405 of the Clean Water Act required EPA to do several activities. The first was to develop a regulation to protect public health from any reasonably anticipated adverse effects from pollutants that might be found in sewage sludge. So this regulation is called Standards for the Use and Disposal of Sewage Sludge, and that was published in 1993. And it's found at 40 CFR Part 503 in the Code of Federal Regulations, which is why it's often called Part 503. So Part 503 establishes pollutant limits, pathogen requirements, vector attraction requirements, and several other requirements when sewage sludge is applied to land as a soil amendment, when it's placed in a surface disposal site, which is essentially a sewage sludge only landfill, or when it's incinerated in a sewage sludge incinerator. Landfilling of sewage sludge in a municipal solid waste landfill is not regulated by Part 503, but it is regulated under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which is RCRA. Virginia?
That's my turn. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about New Jersey's rules and regulation on biosolid. New Jersey has two sets of regulation regarding the management of sludge, particularly the GIPDs, which is New Jersey Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, regulation at the New Jersey Administrative Code, Title 7, Chapter 14A, similar to EPA's 503 program. It's just that there are some aspect about the program which is slightly more stringent than the EPA, but it's pretty much the same. The sludge quality assurance regulation, which is a New Jersey, Administrative Code Title 7 14C, are unique to New Jersey. And this regulation require monitoring and reporting of domestic and industrial residuals. Under this regulation, New Jersey collects sludge quality data regardless of management mode. Next slide, please. The sludge quality assurance regulation was adopted in 1980 and is also specific to New Jersey. This regulation are not a limit setting rule, but is based on the state statute. Requires all sludge generators to comply with land-based sludge management criteria, regardless of management alternatives. The regulation require most domestic and industrial sludge generator in the state to monitor the quality and quantity of sludge generated. It also requires out of the state generators that transport sludge into the state to first notify the department and then comply with the rules. And lastly, the industrial facility permitted by the DLA, which is delegated local authorities, those are also required to comply with the sludge quality assurance regulations. Next slide, please. So this slide shows 3 pie charts. 3 categories of residual, showing how New Jersey the disposal method are being managed here. There's 3 pie charts regarding the domestic residual, industrial residual, and food processing. For domestic, most of the sludge are shipped out of state for beneficial use. This is the primary mode of management. For industrial, then only 10% out of the state for beneficial use. The 69% is disposed to the landfill. For food processing, this is a bigger category. 89% of those residuals are beneficial use in some manner. Okay. Next slide, please. So what EPA has been doing regarding controlling PFAS, addressing PFAS in the environment. Last year, I talked about the PFAS roadmap that was released on October 18 of 2021. That roadmap contained EPA's PFAS strategic program, and for EPA to look at the whole of agency approach and how to address PFAS in many of the authority that are vested with the EPA media programs. And that roadmap also set timelines by which the agency plans to take any kind of the action that we commit to do. I wanted to highlight the LEAP-DIS program, which is similar to the GIP-DIS program in EPA, and also the P-treatment program. These programs are correlated and also connected with the biosolid program, because whatever, as Tess had talked about before, whatever the treatment system comes through, and at the end product, which is end up in the biosolid. So the composition of any of the pollutant, such as PFAS in a biosolid, is really a function of what is coming through the wastewater treatment plant and the source into the waste and the source that are discharging through the wastewater treatment plant. So what in part of the roadmap last year when in 2001 when EPA released it, we also committed to provide guidance to how we're going to implement this plan. Next slide, please. So two memorandums was issued by EPA last year. The first memorandum was issued in April 28, and that addressed PFAS discharge mainly through EPA issue permit. The EPA as the permitting authority, EPA as the control authority for the treatment program. And so EPA also committed to, okay, now we have the authority to issue permit, and we have the guidance to control PFAS through our own permitting system. How about the state? And so we also committed to provide guidance and through a memorandum, which was released in December 5th, 2022, last year, a few weeks ago. And this memo addressed how the state can use their authority to control some of the PFAS, or start thinking about using the permitting authority, using their P-treatment program authority to start working with the PODWs, or how we can control some of these PFAS entering the system. And we also recommend the biosolid assessment, which Tess will go into that a little bit more. Okay, Tess.
So, I kind of talked about Part 503 and the 10 regulated pollutants under there, and Virginia spoke about EPA's commitments to adding PFAS guidelines and requirements under other regulations. So now I'm going to kind of go through how EPA determines if additional chemical pollutants need to be regulated under Part 503, which is our regulation. So the left side of this diagram is the first requirement from the Clean Water Act, which was to establish the regulation. That's Part 503. And the right side is the process for considering if additional chemical pollutants need to be added under Part 503. So Clean Water Act requires EPA to review sewage sludge regulations at least every 2 years, and to identify additional toxic pollutants, and then to set regulations for those pollutants if sufficient scientific evidence says that they may pose harm to human health or the environment. So that's been done kind of in several ways in the past, but now EPA, the biosolids program, is proposing a 3-step process to assess potential risk from pollutants found in biosolids. So that risk assessment framework is going to be reviewed by our Science Advisory Board later this year, so it's not final yet. But the proposed framework consists of 3 steps. So this first step here is prioritization of chemicals that have been found in biosolids. The second step is a risk screen. And then the third step is a refined risk assessment for chemicals that fail the screen. So in our PFAS strategic roadmap, we committed to skipping the prioritization and the screen for PFOA and PFOS and proceeding directly to the refined risk assessment. And that assessment is currently underway. So the first step, the first step in risk assessment Sorry, I'm having some trouble with the slides. Okay. One of the first steps in risk assessment is problem formulation. So that's the second graphic here. And that, sorry, let me go back. So risk assessment is a scientific process, and it essentially considers two primary factors. One is exposure, so how much contact a person or an ecological receptor, such as a plant or a fish, would have with a contaminant in biosolids or in any media, but in this case, biosolids.
The graphic didn't show up, at least on my screen.
Can you see my slides at least?
No, I see you. I don't see any other graphics.
We are still seeing the presentation. I saw a circle come up. Tony, you might just need to reset your view. And if other people are having trouble, it might just be, you may have to rejoin.
All right. No, I was able to pick it up now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yep.
Okay, so risk assessment essentially compares two factors, which is exposure, and then the second would be comparing it to the toxicity of a pollutant. So the second step here, that's problem formulation. Problem formulation articulates essentially the purpose of the assessment. It defines the problem. It determines the conceptual plan. It provides information on chemical sources and occurrence and fate and transport, and the analysis plan for the scientific approach. The problem formulation also includes engagement with states and tribes, risk managers, scientists, members of the community regarding foreseeable science and implementation issues. So in November 2020, EPA held 2 meetings to gather stakeholder input on the PFOA and PFAS risk assessment. Looks like it's not popping up in the slides, but if you're interested in learning more, that summary is available on the EPA Biosolids website. And now the assessment is ongoing, so the next phases would be analysis. Okay, so shown here, I know it's small, but are the pathways considered in risk assessment for human exposure from land application of biosolids. EPA is also considering ecological exposure from land application of biosolids and both ecological and human exposure from surface disposal of biosolids. And the receptor in the model is the farm family, because that population should be the most highly exposed in a land application scenario. So the proposed probabilistic assessment approach uses distributions of chemical, regional, and site-specific data to assess the variability and uncertainty in input parameters that represent waste characteristics, operating practices, environmental conditions across the country where biosolids might be managed. The SAB has not been set yet, but when it is set, there will be a white paper which describes this framework in much more detail available on the EPA website. And if you're interested in learning more, our risk assessment lead, Dr. David Tobias, did give a presentation about this on our last national meeting in November of 2021. And that is also available. That presentation is available on the EPA website. So what happens after EPA completes its risk assessment, which we're committed to doing for PFOA and PFAS by the end of 2024. So the next step would be risk management. If EPA determines that there is risk from PFOA and PFAS in biosolids, risk managers will consider options for things like numerical limitations or best management practice. And if regulatory limits are advised, we will use the standard rulemaking process, which will include interagency review and public comment about those requirements. So in the meanwhile, like Virginia said, a memo came out in December of 2022 for addressing PFAS discharges and NPDES permits. And in that memo, in Section C, there's a recommended biosolids assessment. So EPA believes that preventing PFAS from entering the wastewater in the first place is a foundational step to reduce exposure and potential risks from PFAS contamination. So pollution prevention activities like sewer shed monitoring and source tracking and pretreatment requirements have already been implemented in various locations across the nation with great success. So in Section C, you'll see this recommended biosolids assessment which essentially recommends that states use EPA method 1633 for 40 PFAS compounds to measure their sewage sludge, and then use the monitoring results and industrial user inventories to identify sources of PFAS being discharged to a POTW from industries. After identification of industrial dischargers, the memo recommends implementing pretreatment requirements to reduce the amount of PFAS discharged to a wastewater treatment plant and to validate those reductions using regular monitoring. And this recommendation is based on Michigan's success with a very similar program, and I think you're going to hear more about that later from Jennifer. So EPA believes that this is an important recommendation because some of the PFAS of concern will partition to the solids rather than the effluent during wastewater treatment. And measuring solids is a more reliable indication of their presence at a wastewater treatment plant. Measuring for PFAS also provides an indication of whether an entire sewer shed has potential problems with PFAS concentrations, as opposed to having to monitor concentrations from individual dischargers one at a time. The individual discharge sites can then be targeted if a POTW is found to have high concentrations of PFAS in the sewage sludge. Measuring PFAS in solids also provides the most direct connection to considering if disposal options, including land application, may result in high exposures to PFAS chemicals. So when considering which facilities to monitor, states may consider factors like which management practices are being utilized for the sewage sludge, the flow or the amount of sludge being generated, and the known industrial dischargers from an IU inventory, among other factors. That's all I have, and I think we have some time for questions.
All right, let me suggest that, here we go, my camera was off. Let me suggest if there's any council members that have any questions first, and then I'll open it up to anyone else that would wish to ask a few questions. We do have a few minutes for questions, if you don't mind. And thank you again, Virginia and Tess, for coming and presenting today. It's very informative, and we really appreciate your time. Any council members that have a few questions? All right, Jen, if not, we can open it up to the public then. I guess you would want people to put their question in the chat.
Yes, they could put their question in the chat or raise the hand function would be okay.
All right.
We just need to be mindful of our time.
Yes.
I think you guys did an excellent job. Nobody has any questions. So thank you.
That means that they all agree and all the testimony is going to be consistent with what you guys are doing. All right. Thank you again, Virginia and Tess. Really appreciate your time. And also, you're still welcome to stay on, if you wish, and hear what Michigan has to say. I'm interested in that as well. So thank you again.
Very well. You're welcome.
All right. Again, from Michigan, we have Jennifer Bush. She's going to explain how management of residuals in Michigan is different from New Jersey and some of the advances that they have. We've invited Jennifer Bush, the state of Michigan, to share their experience in PFAS residuals. Michigan has been a national leader in the initiative as their land-based management alternatives are directly affected by PFAS. Michigan is here today to share their approach and findings. Their experiences serves as a model that New Jersey could look at as a resource and learn from as we advance our own initiative. They are a bit ahead of us in this and have had some good successes. Also, I mentioned to Jennifer previously that Rutgers is playing Michigan State tonight, and I'd be an alumni of Rutgers. We're going to have an interesting event tonight. It's at 6:30 on FS1, if you guys are interested. Anyway, she's been with Michigan State Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy for just under 2 years. During this time, Jennifer has worked in the Water Resource Division, Emerging Pollutants Section team, with a role as a statewide contact for both PFAS and biosolids and PFAS in municipal wastewater treatment plants that do not have an industrial pretreatment program. Prior to working in the state of Michigan, Jennifer worked in consulting with experience in investigative field work, environmental reporting, and environmental compliance. She is a graduate of Michigan State University and has a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies and Sustainability, along with a minor in Law, Justice, and Public Policy. So thank you for coming. Appreciate your time, and it's all yours, Jennifer.
All right, thank you. Are you able to see my slideshow?
I'm going to
No.
click on it and I will
Okay.
have it. Yes.
Okay, sounds
Thank you.
good. Thank you for having me. Like was mentioned, my name is Jennifer Bush. I work for the state of Michigan in the Water Resources Division. I work on a team called the Emerging Pollutant Section. So our team is specific to PFAS right now. And I'm the statewide PFAS and biosolids contact. I actually am gonna, while I go through my slides, I'm gonna turn my camera off. I've had a couple Microsoft Teams issues today in the office, so I want to make sure you can hear me. So I'm gonna keep my camera off, if that's okay.
Okay.
For our agenda today, I'm going to briefly give some background on what we do here in Michigan before getting into our land application of biosolids containing PFAS strategy, because this is one of our newer strategies, and it really will help to give some background about how we came here. So I'll start with what we call the MPART overview. I'll go through our Water Resources Division PFAS strategies and what we have, along with the surface water and groundwater PFAS criteria we have here in Michigan, and then a couple of the initiatives that were in place prior to the biosolids strategy. So in Michigan, we have the Michigan PFAS Action Response Team. This is referred to as MPART here. It was created as an enduring body under an executive order from the governor's office to ensure that 7 state agencies working on PFAS are coordinating. So MPART coordinates with the federal government sometimes on several programs and projects. When we get to the project level, we are often partnering with local officials and local units of government as well. We believe here in Michigan that MPART communication structure is one of the reasons that we've been so successful at rapidly identifying PFAS exposures, along with using a data-driven and scientific approach. So looking at this graphic, if you can see my mouse, I work in Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, or what we refer to as EGLE as an abbreviation. So our division, or our department's kind of in this MPART members. And in EGLE, we work across departments. So with all of these departments in this kind of group, along with different divisions throughout EGLE, to make sure we're coordinating on PFAS. Okay, so this here is our MPART webpage. So here you can find information on drinking water and wells, ongoing investigations and sites. There's also information on testing, fish and wildlife, and public engagement. At the top, hopefully it's playing through the video, there's a work group tab. If you click on that at the top, you'll find work groups that kind of focus in on specific areas or different programs. There you can find the land application work group, which I'm a member of and I actually lead with my manager, Stephanie Kamer here. So this work group includes members from various divisions in EGLE, but also our Agriculture and Rural Development Agencies, what we call MDARD, and our Health and Human Services. So the land application work group, I wanted to point out to this group because we do meet monthly to coordinate on PFAS in any type of land application, including biosolids, along with industrial residuals and beneficial reuse. So in Water Resources Division, where I work, we regulate biosolids land applications. This is just a quick graphic to kind of show you what my team does and how we have kind of laid out our emerging pollutant section team. So this graphic just shows the different strategies and initiatives that the emerging pollutant section has in place for regulating and monitoring PFAS across our division's different programs in water resources. So today I will be briefly discussing the Industrial Pretreatment Program Initiative and the NPDES permitting strategy before discussing the land application of biosolids containing PFAS interim strategy. I also wanted to quickly go over, I know this is only applicable in Michigan, but it's kind of how we have moved forward and how we've been able to kind of put these strategies in place is we do have surface water criteria for 3 PFAS analytes here in Michigan. There's a drinking water source and a non-drinking water source for each of those 3. So this table shows PFOS and PFOA along with the most recently added PFBS. We're also assessing the potential for a couple others to build up in fish tissue so we can derive human health values, and hopefully those will come out in the next year as well. I also like to point out that PFOS here in Michigan tends to be our regulatory driver because of this. As you can see, it's much lower than the other two, and that is due to the bioaccumulative nature of PFOS that we found. And then again, this is just to show you, we do have seven analytes that we regulate for in groundwater as well. And here you can see those listed out. So again, I know I'm here to talk mainly about the biosolids land application strategy, but I don't think it would make much sense before going into our background of how we got here. So in Michigan, the Industrial Pretreatment Program PFAS initiative was launched in February of 2018. At that time, we had 95 wastewater treatment plants with approved pretreatment programs. So here in Michigan, we refer to those, and throughout this presentation, I'll call them IPPs. So for our initiative, we asked these treatment plants with IPPs to look for sources of PFAS within their collection system. These treatment plants were then required to evaluate their industrial users and other sources such as contaminated sites as potential sources of PFAS. After reviewing their potential sources, these treatment plants were then required to conduct follow-up sampling of users identified as probable sources of PFAS. EGLE required sampling of the treatment plant effluent if these probable sources being sampled were discharging above a screening criteria of 12 parts per trillion for PFOS. So like I said, that was PFOS really tends to be the driver here in Michigan. So EGLE took this approach to sample our wastewater treatment plant effluent to pinpoint where PFAS was, or the sample of sources prior to the effluent, to pinpoint where PFAS was being discharged from throughout the collection system. This also assisted in the communication between the wastewater treatment plant and the industrial user. So by kind of taking this industry-focused approach, we were able to reach that goal of understanding who was discharging PFAS, while also working closely with the treatment plant and the industrial users at the same time. So in August of 2020, that industrial user data that was submitted through this initiative was compiled and released in a report detailing the identified industrial sources of PFOS to IPP wastewater treatment plants. Again, those are treatment plants that have industrial pretreatment programs that have large, regulated industries. So our IPP staff refer to this document as the source document. This table is a summary from that source document of the findings and that best represents our efforts to compile and summarize this information we had at that point in time. So again, EGLE defines sources as those exceeding that screening level of 12 parts per trillion of PFOS for users to the treatment plant at least one time. So the impact of these sources on the treatment plant effluent does depend on factors such as size of the treatment plant and the PFOS loading from each of these industrial sources. Along with how much dilution occurs from more residential or domestic wastewater within the collection system. We are actually working on updating this document as we haven't updated it since 2020, and we hope to have that published later this year. So like I said, I'm the statewide contact for biosolids and non-industrial pretreatment program wastewater treatment plants. This is just a staff map of the staff, the IPP PFAS staff that we have here in Michigan that split up the state. So following the IPP initiative, like I said, we have a couple things before getting into land application. We did start phasing PFOS and PFOA effluent limits into municipal NPDES IPP wastewater treatment plant permits for those issued after October 1st of 2021. However, for wastewater treatment plants without an IPP, or those that we refer to here in Michigan as non-IPP, if they are categorized as an EPA major, these permits issued after October 1st of 2021 included PFOS and PFOA monitoring at least 4 times over their new permit cycle, so over the 5 years. If there is an exceedance of PFOS or PFOA, or most recently now PFBS, found through the additional monitoring requirements of the permit, the treatment plant is required to increase their monitoring frequency and undergo steps similar to the IPP PFAS initiative to understand where sources of PFAS may be within their collection system. Treatment plants are able to work with WRD staff for guidance and assistance when creating monitoring plans to understand how to identify these sources and reduce them into the treatment plant. So now we'll get into the land application of biosolids containing PFAS interim strategy. So like I said, this is these 2 initiatives that I've mentioned beforehand has kind of led us to this newly released land application strategy. So this was released in March of 2021. The effective date was July 1st of 2021. So any treatment plant land applying on or after July 1st of 2021 was required to sample biosolids for PFAS prior to land application. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, in Water Resources Division and in Michigan, the term biosolids only refers to residuals from wastewater treatment plants which undergo that additional treatment to be land applied as biosolids. So this strategy does not apply to any programs outside of biosolids or outside of Water Resources Division. So this doesn't apply to materials such as industrial residuals. So the sampling frequency is determined by the size of the wastewater treatment plant and whether the treatment plant has an IPP. So all NPDES majors, all 2218 groundwater permittees, and all IPPs are required to sample once per calendar year. That's prior to initial land application of that calendar year. All others, so meaning NPDES minors, non-IPPs, or those without an industrial pretreatment program, and all other groundwater permittees are required to sample once per permit cycle or a minimum every 5 years if that permit gets extended. We also require communication to landowners and farmers prior to land applications so that they can understand the results. And all sample results must be submitted to our division via our public database called MyEnviroPortal. And that has to be submitted to us prior to land application as well. So currently we required wastewater treatment plants to analyze for 28 PFAS analytes. That will change once the draft method 1633 goes into place. Then we will require the analytes, which I believe is 40. But as of right now, we do only require 28 analytes. However, it's based on the PFOS results that the treatment plants are placed into the following tiers. So one thing I want to point out is the surface water and groundwater criteria that we showed you earlier was in parts per trillion. These are in parts per billion for our biosolids. So equal to or below 20 parts per billion, above 20 and less than 50 parts per billion, above 50, less than 125 parts per billion, and then equal to or 125 parts per billion. So here, above 20 parts per billion for PFOS specifically, we recommend that wastewater treatment plants will sample their effluent and identify sources if they are not already doing so through the industrial pretreatment program. Once it is equal to or above 50, they are required to sample their wastewater treatment plant effluent within 60 days. Identify sources, kind of go through that same initiative of the IPP PFAS initiative, and also reduce their land application rate. The land application rate is required to be reduced to 1.5 dry tons per acre or less, which is about half of the typical rate for biosolids in Michigan. And here in Michigan, it's typically, like I said, about 3 dry tons per acre. And we do, the majority of our biosolids application is a liquid injection. And then once it is equal to or above 125 parts per billion, these biosolids are deemed industrially impacted and cannot be land applied. So when I say industrially impacted, this refers to biosolids at treatment plants that we believe has significant sources of PFAS discharging to the treatment plants, which then is accumulating in the solids. This is a pie chart of the PFOS results we've seen thus far from about 200 wastewater treatment plants. So this is the data that we received in calendar year 2021 and calendar year 2022 from every treatment plant that land applied once that initiative, once the strategy went into place. So as you can see, about 82% of our results have been in the less than 20 tier. 13% above 20 less than 50. So those are the wastewater treatment plants with additional recommendations. 4% have a 50 but less than 125, and we have had one treatment plant above that 125 industrially impacted threshold. So this chart, I know there's a lot to look at here, but prior to the biosolids interim strategy, like I said, all treatment plants with that IPP program went through the initiative. So as I mentioned, this allowed Eagle to work with treatment plants in understanding types of industrial sources discharging PFAS into collection systems. From there, they, like I said, they were able to identify, sample, and control these sources. So this has not only impacted the wastewater treatment plant effluents we've seen, but we've also seen significant reductions in the final solids as well. So this table here, like I said, there's a lot to look at here, but this table shows 5 wastewater treatment plants that previously had biosolids deemed industrially impacted that were identified through that initiative. So the left starts with their highest effluent, then shows their most recent effluent, followed by percent reduction. The next column shows the 2017, 2018 solids PFOS concentrations along with their 2021 and 2022 results. So as you can see, 4 of the 5 wastewater treatment plants with industrially impacted biosolids have achieved above 90% reductions through the implementation of source control. And I always like to point out here, this one treatment plant, that this is the one that we had deemed industrially impacted on our pie chart. And we actually had them resample their biosolids in 2021. Because they are going through that IPP initiative, we saw that their monthly effluent, we saw that it was quickly increasing, and we found that there was actually a re-exposure to a PFAS source. Then we asked them to sample their biosolids. They saw that their solids went significantly up. So then they weren't able to land apply those. This table kind of shows the same data as the previous slide, but with treatment plants that didn't have solids deemed industrially impacted. So although these solids concentrations in 2017 and 2018 were lower, we still like to point out that Eagle has generally seen reductions in these concentrations as well since the IPP initiative, which really has helped us continue to focus on source control. So now I kind of like to talk about what we're going to do moving forward. So like I said, a lot of our data has been coming from IPP wastewater treatment plants. So after this implementation of the biosolids strategy, we've been able to obtain data on non-IPP wastewater treatment plants as well. So this table shows the breakdown of treatment plants in 2021 and 2022 based on if they have an IPP and which biosolids tier they fall in. So again, we're looking at PFOS specifically. So on the left in the blue is 2021, on the right in the green is 2022. As you can see, in 2021, wastewater treatment plants in the less than 20 tier were 82 non-IPPs and 54 IPPs, and above 20 included 17 non-IPPs and 9 IPPs. In 2022, we saw similar results with 18 non-IPPs and 10 IPPs above 20. So to us, we took this as these results indicate the impacts of the IPP PFAS initiative and being able to reduce those concentrations of solids at those IPP wastewater treatment plants. So again, those plants that accept industrial wastewater. So IPPs were previously Eagle's focus due to the higher potential of these treatment plants having industries discharging PFAS within their collection systems. However, these results from the non-IPPs were not expected, so now we are able to kind of shift our focus to now addressing PFAS in these non-IPP wastewater treatment plants. I also like to note that although these non-IPPs results were not expected, we haven't had a non-IPP wastewater treatment plant with biosolids deemed industrially impacted. So these concentrations are still magnitudes lower than the concentrations we are seeing at these IPPs. So this graph, I just like to show our 2022 biosolids PFOS concentrations. So that top line is our industrially impacted threshold, along with the average and the median. So as we reviewed the data, we really, like I said, we're trying to focus on those above 20. So we're really trying to understand why treatment plants aren't falling into that lowest tier. So right now, we're really focusing on these 28 wastewater treatment plants with PFOS ranging from 21 to 86 parts per billion. So this is just a zoomed in graph of those 28 wastewater treatment plants. So same lines as before, our industrially impacted thresholds, our average and our median. So our average is right at 14, our median is at 9. And looking at these results, like I said, we really want to gain a better understanding of these biosolids concentrations at non-IPPs. And what I really like to point out here as well is these concentrations and these tiers that I keep mentioning, these are not risk-based numbers. This is all just based off of studies that we've done and through the initiative. So the risk-based evaluation that the EPA is conducting, this is really what we have in place while we wait for that to be completed. So kind of what we're doing moving forward is source identification and ongoing sampling at these non-IPP collection systems. We really feel like we have kind of a good grip on the IPP wastewater treatment plants, but now we're moving into these source identification at non-IPPs as well. So this is collection system sampling, treatment plant site visits, household storage cleanouts. You know, we found some people that don't land apply per year that PFOS really just tends to stick to the solids. Also review of their users and review of any nearby PFAS sites. So really the collection system sampling has been a common approach with these treatment plants. This has allowed them to review areas of the communities, take samples throughout the system and understand where they may or may not have detection of PFAS. Really allowing them to focus in on specific areas for further identification. I know I kind of threw a lot at this group, but we do have a biosolids PFAS webpage here in Michigan. It looks like this on the left-hand side. So this has all of our links to reports, any field sampling we've done, or any initiative that we have out. Is all the links are on this page, along with our biosolids staff map split up there. And I also have included some links to just any of the initiatives I did mention. So like I said, the IPP initiative that was back in 2018 that kind of got this all these strategies started, along with our source doc and these reports for the statewide studies we've conducted as well.
Thank you. You know, it's really kind of impressive to see the reduction. Some of the reductions are pretty significant. Well, you know, about 90%. So that's good to hear that there's some hope in making sure that what we're doing is effective and can be accomplished. Let me do this. Oh, I did have a question then, if I may, Jennifer. You said you had working groups. I think you said you had 18 different work groups. How do they coordinate, and how, you know, like going up the ladder, how are they going to share their information?
Sure. So let me turn my camera back on and I'm not presenting. So our work groups, yeah, we basically, like I said, they're kind of split up across the divisions and across different programs. So like I said, I lead the land application work group. So each work group meets monthly. And so we kind of have our own individual work groups. Some work groups have subcommittees. So we do have subcommittees on our work group of kind of smaller groups to work on specific items. But for our work groups, how we all interact with each other, here at Michigan, the MPART, the bigger MPART, I guess, staff, they actually hold quarterly meetings with all PFAS staff. We have quarterly meetings where all the work groups give updates on what we're working on and what we're seeing. So that is kind of a process of meeting monthly, and then sometimes, like I said, those subcommittees, but we do meet quarterly as with MPART as a whole.
That's good. Yeah, I wondered how you coordinated all your different activities, and you know how that's viewed from above, you know, in your administration. All right, if you could take a few questions. If there's any council members that have a question, you know, again, raise your hand. All right, do you see any, Jen Feltus?
Yes, we have one in the chat from Stephen Weaver. US EPA's December 2022 memorandum recommends the utilization of draft analytical method 1633. Why is Michigan waiting to require the draft analytical method?
So we basically have a biosolids and sludge PFAS sampling guidance here in Michigan. So we are just waiting for the draft method to be approved before we require it. So we actually recommend a couple of different isotope dilution methods that treatment plants are able to utilize with their labs. But once that draft method is approved in NPDES permits, then it will be required to use that method.
Anyone else? I have a question. You said you concentrated on PFOS, sulfonic acids. Like, you know, what in your environment wanted you to concentrate on that area?
So here in Michigan, we focused on PFOS really because of that bioaccumulative nature. We do track and record all analytes, all those 28 analytes. So we do still keep track of those 28 analytes. And that is really specifically in biosolids. We focus on PFOS, and also another reason that we focus on PFOS in this biosolids strategy is prior to this strategy being written and released, the only biosolids information we had was from the IPP PFAS initiative. And then we did actually a 2018 statewide study where we kind of did an influent, effluent, and solids sample at these treatment plants. And what we were seeing was in the solids at these treatment plants is that PFOS tend to be the analyte that was sticking to the solids the most. It was the one that had the highest % detection, and we saw it more often, and we saw it higher at PFOS. So we then took that information from the initiative and from the statewide study that we were really going to focus on PFOS. And again, that bioaccumulative nature as well kind of played into it.
Cool. Okay, thank you very much. Again, thank you for our presenters. You're obviously welcome to stay. We'd like you to stay. And if you guys have any questions too, feel free to please ask. At this point, I'm going to suggest that we open this up for the public comment. You're going to see some slides coming up. I hope that you all, when you got the invitation, the invite, there was a series of questions that the council formulated in cooperation with the department to see, well, what are we trying to get out of this? What are some of the suggestions that we have? Where do we want to take this in the future? So these were our thoughts. Doesn't mean that these are the only things that we want comment on. If you have something that's more pertinent, but at the same time, we'd like your comments on the following questions. I'm not going to sit here and read all those questions because I assume you could see them on your screen. And I'm hoping that you also saw them when you got your invite. Written comments, well, we're asking you to submit in the chat, and Jennifer Feltus will go down the list on, based on the, the order in which you guys had indicated you wish to comment. And we're going to limit our comments to about 5 minutes at the most. I mean, sometimes we get a lot of comments on these things and we want to get everybody in. So 5 minutes, Jen's going to monitor your time. We're going to give you a signal if it gets about that time. But when all the comments are done, if you're still not finished and want to add some more information, we'll give you some more time to do so. Written comments too, afterwards, we often get written comments after the hearing because people, listen to what we have to say. They take advantage of that information and they formulate your thoughts afterwards. So we're always willing to get written comments up until January the 27th, because we want to be able to put this together and respond to them to the commissioner and the department regarding our suggestions. So January the 27th, please in Microsoft Word or higher and email your comments to the department, or there's on the bottom of your invitation, there's information on, I believe, a mailing address too that you could send it to. So with that, you could see the slides that we have up. These are the public testimony questions that we're asking you to consider and offer us comments on. And you'll see some other slides that also give you, a pie chart understanding of the different levels of contributions that we get in residuals in the state. So it's informative. So take a couple of minutes and take a look at this stuff, and please formulate your questions or comments. And we're very interested in hearing them. That's what we're here for today. And if there's any questions of me and the process, let me know.
Just as a reminder, drop your name and your affiliation in the chat. But we can get started with this. Our first name that we had in the chat today. Sorry, I'm technology here. Going back to is Ronald Anastasio from the Association of Environmental Authorities.
Hey, Ron, a longtime friend and associate that I
Yes.
worked with in the past, and welcome and thank you for coming, and looking forward to your comments.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you to the Clean Water Council at NJDEP. We appreciate the time and the hearing. So my name is Ronald Anastasio. I'm the executive director of the Somerset Raritan Dodge Sewage Authority, which is also a member organization of the Association of Environmental Authorities. I'm also a member of the AEA Executive Committee, and I am here testifying on AEA's behalf. We intend to submit written comments as well. We commend the Clean Water Council for continuing to explore the environmental challenge of PFAS last year in wastewater and this year in residuals. The NJDEP has been thoughtful about preparing to regulate PFAS and surface water discharge. Likewise, for biosolids, NJDEP should carefully consider regulatory and liability implications. It must avoid regrettable missteps made previously when it issued groundwater discharge rules based on analytical methods, inappropriate to wastewater. If future regulations or restrictions are contemplated, they should include informed scientific risk assessments and avoid banning appropriate use of high-quality, low-risk products. AEA notes that our current members do not manufacture PFAS chemicals. They receive it in the industrial, commercial, and domestic wastewater flowing into the plant and ending up in the biosolids. Manufacturers who profit from PFAS should pay for cleanup and treatment, not our customers. AEA also notes that PFAS chemicals are ubiquitous. They're designed to be indestructible. This first step to address them should be to reduce their use in thousands of products, which requires federal level regulation. AEA recommends that policy solutions consider the limited options for residuals management, particularly in New Jersey. Typically, in New Jersey, we do not put residuals in-state landfills. Residuals that go directly into landfills are trucked out of state. In New Jersey, we incinerate residuals. We use incinerated residual ash for cover in landfills, and we make a beneficial reuse fertilizer out of high-quality residuals, and this organic product is used in fertilizer in municipal, recreational, and landscaping settings. According to the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, or NACWA, no federal agencies have questioned existing studies or regulations that find land application safe. AEA recommends that the NJDEP take advantage of federal level analysis that is coming soon. The US EPA promises guidance on PFAS and land application by next month. Soon after that, similar guidance is anticipated from the Environmental Council of the States, or ECOS. EPA is also studying PFAS in residuals as part of its PFAS roadmap. It has been a mechanism to revise residuals regulations based on periodic reviews for new pollutants. While the EPA actions play out, New Jersey can better understand its PFAS pollution by 1, continuing to trace industrial sources, 2, using data being collected by drinking water purveyors, 3, using leachate and wastewater data being collected per permit requirements and on a voluntary basis, and 4, and by filling any existing gaps in tracking residuals, whether in-state or trucked out of state. Finally, we recommend that the NJDEP consider having POTWs that accept landfill leachate, require PFAS minimization plans, and annual reporting. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate your time and your comments. And please, send them to us in writing, as I indicated, Microsoft Word 2003 or whatever it is and higher, so we can do that. Jen, do we have others?
Yes, we have one more. I just want to remind everybody to drop their name in the chat. If you are on a phone line and would like to testify, just pop on real quick right now and let us know. Otherwise, Mary Firestone, Executive Director for Mid-Atlantic Biosolids Association, wishes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and the New Jersey Clean Water Council for holding this public hearing to address PFAS compounds in water and wastewater residuals. And I'd like to thank the speakers as well as the commissioner. My name is Mary Firestone, and I'm the Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Biosolids Association, or MABA. Since 1997, the Mid-Atlantic Biosolids Association has been communicating the benefits of resource recovery within the biosolids community through information sharing and within the communities we serve through advocacy and outreach. MABA has submitted a position statement on PFAS to the New Jersey DEP and CWC, and I will highlight a few of those, the aspects of that statement now. PFAS concentrations in wastewater and biosolids have been going down because of greatly reduced manufacture of PFOA and PFOS, two major types of PFAS in commercial products since 2011, though their use has not been eliminated globally. The cessation of manufacture of PFOA and PFOS in the US has resulted in significantly declining levels of PFAS in human blood samples, which demonstrates the health improvement potential of eliminating the sources of PFAS compounds. The trackdown of PFAS at industrial sites, airports, and other suspected locations has proved effective at identifying hotspots of potential PFAS sources. And the subsequent regulatory cleanup responses to reduce the PFAS releases to public sewers have also been effective. As you heard today, the EPA is conducting research on the fate and transport of PFAS through land application of biosolids. Additionally, EPA is developing procedures for reproducible analytical methods and guidance for land application, landfill disposal, and incineration. Compared to product use exposure, disposal options of landfilling and incineration may pose higher human and environmental risks than land application. And furthermore, human exposure to PFAS compounds comes most often not from biosolids, but instead from ubiquitous sources in the environment, such as in household dust released from furniture, in individual and community water supplies, and in everyday household products. And here's our general summary of what we recommend to the New Jersey Clean Water Council for addressing PFAS and biosolids. Again, the full PFAS position statement has been submitted to the DEP and CWC via email. MABA recommends that the New Jersey Clean Water Council continue its efforts to identify sources of PFAS releases to the public water sources and to evaluate the risks of releases to publicly owned sewer systems in New Jersey, including airfields, landfills, manufacturers with historical PFAS uses, and industrial laundries, drawing on work of officials in other states. New Jersey Clean Water Council needs to maintain a leading position in the accreditation of laboratories within the state for PFAS testing of wastewater and biosolids as the EPA works to gain multi-lab validation of the proposed 1633 test methods. New Jersey Clean Water Council needs to develop for public review and comment a protocol for use by biosolids generators on how to properly sample wastewater and biosolids to avoid contamination of those samples. We recommend too that the council be subject to cost-benefit evaluation of all proposed PFAS regulations. The current focus by elected officials and media is apt to skew agency decisions in ways that will have negative consequences, such as reduction in biosolids recycling, hardships on farmers, and increased greenhouse gas production with no meaningful reduction in PFAS exposure. The polluter pays principle that guides many environmental protections in the state of New Jersey should be applied to reducing human and environmental risks from PFAS. This approach relies on another principle, that regulatory decisions be transparent and science-based. So in closing, MABA welcomes the opportunity to work with the council and the DEP to review and discuss data collection ideas and protocols, as well as the latest technologies available for PFAS treatment.
Thank you very much. Good comments, and we will then bring those to the council and review them as well. Jen.
Dennis Palmer just jumped in. Thank you, Dennis. You're up.
Thank you. I was having trouble getting my mic turned on, and thank you to the council for having today's hearing. I'm the executive director of the Land and Sewage Authority. Very unique position. We've been land applying effluent from treatment plants on our site since about 1929. So we're close to 100 years in land application of effluent, as well as since 1989, the land application of biosolids on our own farm and another 150 acres of forestry for growing trees. I'll just follow up Mr. Anastasio's comment about the missteps dealing with some of the earlier work on applying the PFAS limits to wastewater discharges. And that is kind of a horse before the cart issue. That the authority, excuse me, the state was using the isotope dilution, and each one is lab separately approved. And you look at uniformity of data. Meanwhile, EPA and both mentioned earlier by other ones, the April 28th and December 5th memos from headquarters to all the regions is to use the 1633. Now, while it's still a draft, at least you would have uniformly across the entire country data that hopefully is of uniform nature. My concern is, as we go into biosolids or residuals, that we also wait for EPA to come out with a national standard. One of the issues for public agencies in using laboratories is we have to bid them annually with the right to extend the contract 1 year. So potentially, as you bid contracts, you could have 3 labs within the span of your 5-year permit. And it again comes to each lab being approved independently with their isotope dilution model. How uniform? Where's the continuity of data? So I'm hoping as the council goes forward that we do look towards a key item is the continuity of data. And is it good data? And as the data goes across the broad reach of the entire country as we go forward. I will follow up with more detailed comments, but again, let's get a national methodology and not put the horse before the cart in applying some local parameters or local test methodology that is not uniform across the state and across all dischargers. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Palmer. Anyone else? Jen, do you have anyone else?
I currently do not see anybody else, but I just wanted to let everybody know that we are recording this presentation. It may take us a little bit of time, but we will get it posted to the website, as well as presentations from EPA and Michigan. We do have those, so those will get posted. And then, as we did last year, we will also post any written testimony that we receive. So just so everybody knows that we will get that stuff posted sometime after comments are due to us, January 27th, to cwc@dep.nj.gov. Going to talk really slow and see if anybody else wants to provide some testimony or comments.
And I want to thank again the commissioner for coming to speak with us today. I know he's very involved in this issue. We appreciate his time. I know he's very busy. Also, Virginia, Tess, and Jennifer, for coming and speaking with us and sharing what those guys are doing in their realms. And we really appreciate it. Again, it's your last chance to comment here. And then also you'll have the opportunity to submit written testimony. I know we often get significant written testimony after the event. So, please really be encouraged. Please, we're looking for your advice. I mean, we're going to be making recommendations. And if you want your thoughts included, get it in. Okay, please. All right. Anyone else? Last chance. No others, Jennifer?
I do not see
Okay.
anybody else.
So then with that said, then I will call this public hearing to a close and encourage people to write your comments in. Thank you all for coming. I know we had a very large group. We've had over 100 folks that have tuned in, and I appreciate the time and effort that you put in to listen to us. And please give us your comments. We're really looking forward to it. Okay, thank you all.